All right, there's a good chance this is recording because I only halfway pay attention to how quick time views. I apologize for being gone. I have two sick kids at home, so I am there being mom today. I have posted these notes to Canvas, so if you want just the slides, you can view just the slides. And then I also created two separate example videos to help you with the practice problems in your workbook. So those are separate also on Canvas. But just because I'm not there doesn't mean we're not going to do our question of the day. I made a discussion board on Canvas if you want to share a video. But our question today is, what does your algorithm bring you? So if you are doom scrolling on whatever your choice social media platform is, what types of videos are you seeing? So feel free to share with your classmates. I'm at home, so feel free to post one to the discussion board so I have something to watch. Instagram is my chosen platform. And right now, my Instagram reels are full of zoo animals eating snacks. And if you are at all curious as to what I mean by that, you didn't think you were not going to get an example. So this guy here, this is Rico. I had to use YouTube because it's a PowerPoint here. But Rico here is from the Cincinnati Zoo. And here he is eating some corn. And look how cute he is. Did you even know porcupines were so cute? He's just nibbling. He eats different snacks every day. He has a very well-balanced diet. So yes, that's what my algorithm is bringing me right now. All right, today we are talking about non-Mendelian inheritance. So we said last week that we were doing all of Mendel's pea plant experiments, which involve either or, right? It's tall or it's short, it's purple or it's white, right? There was no middle ground, which made pea plants really great for research and for data collection and for kind of showing how things were passed down from one generation to the next. But we also said pretty regularly that this was not, in fact, how most genes work, especially when we're talking about humans or more complicated things, right? Everything in the world is not one thing or the other. So what we're going to look at today are a couple of different, what we call inheritance patterns that don't follow Mendel's rules, right? There's no clear dominant or recessive trait. These notes are not very long. It's just a page. The practice is fairly long, if you will, because you're going to practice each type a couple of times just so that you're comfortable there. So today our goal is to finish the notes. You're going to do some, not all of the practice problems, and then when we see each other again, then we will complete that practice together. So again, we've been discussing things that are completely dominant, meaning that the dominant allele, if present, right, in the homozygous dominant or in a heterozygous genotype, is going to completely shadow that recessive allele. So tall plants are going to be tall, whether they had two tall parents or they had a heterozygous tall parent. And Mendel was lucky to have used those pea plant traits because, again, most genes that we look at in living things tend to be more complicated. So the first one is going to be kind of the easiest, I think, to understand, and this is called incomplete dominance. So when traits are incompletely dominant, we can say that the heterozygous phenotype has an intermediate between the two homozygous phenotypes. And what we mean by that is if a red flower crosses a white flower, red would be our dominant, white would be our recessive. Instead of being all red, we see that they look pink. So this is very much if you mix red paint and white paint, you get something in the middle, right? Tall and short make medium height. So for this example, snapdragons can be red, or they can be white, or they can be pink. So what I would recommend doing so that you have an example of what this looks like is in that left-hand column of your notes, go ahead and write down what the three genotypes are, because we still have three, right? We had what we used to call homozygous dominant, big R, big R. In this case, that's going to be red. We're considering that to be the dominant trait. Little r, which is homozygous recessive, which in this case would be white. And then we have our heterozygous genotype, big R, little r, but instead of being, again, red, right, because dominant overshadows it, now they're going to share. We get pink. So if we were filling out our Punnett square, right, red would be big R, white would be little r, we do our square, and we find that all of the offspring are heterozygous. So in this case, they are 100% heterozygous, and they are 100% pink. So incomplete, right, gives us something in between. That's how I remember that one. Incomplete is in between. So we see this with a lot of plants, right? There's kind of a variety of colors that we see that you can't always predict. These flowers could have red offspring on the next round. They could have white offspring, and we see all sorts of different combinations. The next one is what we call co-dominance. So to me, co-dominance is like a co-captain, right? Neither of you are number one. You're sharing that position. So when traits are co-dominant, the heterozygous, again, the blended one, that middle phenotype, is going to fully display both alleles. So this is how we get spots and stripes. So because neither allele is dominant, we don't have a dominant, we don't have a recessive, we're going to write both letters as capitals. And instead of using just one letter of the alphabet, we're actually going to choose two different letters. So in our cow example here, some cows show co-dominance. So we have R, which is going to be our homozygous red. Obviously this one looks brown. So big R would be red. WW, still capital because it is a dominant trait, is homozygous for white. And then if we have that heterozygous, it would be RW. So again, it's still a blend, but this is what we would call roan, which is where you get these red and white kind of spotted cows. So in our cross here, if we take a cow that is fully red and a cow that is fully white, we get offspring that get reds from mom, whites from dad, and therefore all of these offspring are going to have this roan sort of speckled pattern. So they're 100% heterozygous, and they show 100% of that heterozygous phenotype, right? There's no dominant phenotype to overshadow. And again, if we're looking kind of forward speaking, if these two speckled cows were to have offspring, right, we would end up with a brown, a white, a couple of speckled, right? So we can see these traits go in and out, and every generation has the potential to be a little bit different. All right, the next two, one of them is another pattern that we will talk about and do a Punnett square for. You won't practice that one today. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is less of kind of the shared trait situation and more of just an explanation. So the last one we're going to talk about today, and we'll spend time on this when I come back, are multiple alleles. So many genes come in multiple forms. And we say that these genes have multiple alleles. Multiple meaning more than two. Right, everything up until now that we've talked about is either red, white, right? Then we talked about pink. There's only really two letters, a capital and a lowercase. Now we're going to see a greater variety of things. And because of that, because each organism still only gets two alleles, right? You can only get one from mom and one from dad. We only study multiple alleles in whole populations. Even just your family, because you have the same parents, only shows your parents' alleles. But when we look at an entire population, say we looked at Oak Park, right, we see not only brunettes and blondes and redheads, we also see black hair and curly hair and straight hair and all of these things, right? We're able to see all of the ways that hair, being the gene, can show all those different alleles. So rabbit hair color is another example. We'll spend time in class talking about human blood type. So rabbit color has a whole spectrum. We have this big C, which would be what we call a full color rabbit. We can also have what's called chinchilla colored, so it's kind of a gray. So it's little c and then CH for chinchilla. Then we have this Himalayan one, which is supposed to be kind of a light gray. So it's a C, little h. And then we can also have the albino or fully white rabbit, and that's going to be little c. So on either end of the spectrum, we still have kind of that traditional brown is dominant, white recessive, but now we have different degrees in the middle of that. So when we look at these examples, we have a lot more we have to pay attention to. So usually there's what they call a domino effect. So for example, full color is dominant over everything else. So if there's a big C, that's what we're going to get. Chinchilla colored is dominant over both the Himalayan and the albino. And then the Himalayan is dominant over the albino. albino is dominant over nothing. So we kind of have a lot to pay attention and organize here. So we will do a couple of examples. This is not a type of practice problem or test question that you're likely to see. So we won't work on those today. And then the last thing we want to talk about today is what we call polygenic traits. So poly means many. So polygenic traits are things that are controlled by 2 or more genes, right? We know, and we kind of mentioned that eye color is a little more complicated than just having an eye color gene because it's actually controlled by several different things. So these genes may or may not be on the same chromosome, right? We have 23 of them, so they could be on a lot of places. Sometimes they're both on the same one. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're a normal kind of 2 allele, traditional, dominant, or recessive. Sometimes they're multiple alleles, right? It's very complicated. And we know this because when we look at people, we see such a wide range of tones and colors and things like that. So we get this big range of phenotypes. Most human traits, especially skin color, hair color, eye color, are polygenic. It's not as straightforward as one trait is this and the other is that. Again, we're not pea plants. Those are why they're great for research. So that's the end of our notes. You are going to find 2 additional videos that go over the practice problems. There's one for the complete dominance, and then you have 3 problems to work out on your own. And then there's one for incomplete dominance, and then again, you'll have 3 practice problems in your packet to work through on your own. The expectation is that these practice problems are done before you come to class, either Friday or Monday, whenever we see each other next, when we will talk about the multiple allele option and we'll review what you covered today on your own. Oh, sorry, I forgot there was one last part. So are there other factors involved in gene expression? Is everything just what mom and dad were, or are there other things that contribute? And the short answer is yes. There are both internal and external environmental factors that can change how an organism expresses its traits. So internally, that might be things like hormone levels. If they're high or low, that can change how a gene does its job or which genes get expressed. Immune responses in particular, so a lot of autoimmune disorders are problematic because they change how a cell expresses what it has. So it does different things. And then externally, in terms of environmental factors, this could be things like lifestyle, right? We've talked about how smoking and sun tanning, right, UV rays, can cause mutations. Mutations are going to change how the gene works. Lifting weights is a little bit more complicated. It's not that lifting weights are bad, absolutely not. But when you tax your muscles and you ask them to do things, it can change different internal conditions, in particular acidity, and that can change how your cells work as well. And then a good kind of interesting example of environmental factors like temperature is that leatherback sea turtles, they lay their eggs on the sand, right? They bury them in a hole. We can see that little hole there. Their temperature is what determines the gender. So if the eggs are cold, they are going to be male. And if the eggs are warm, they're going to be female. So in this kind of cluster of eggs, right, some are going to be warmer and some are going to be cooler. And that's actually how the genes get expressed. So all of the eggs have the potential to be either. It's a matter of what temperature they are that kind of triggers one gene to work versus the other gene. And that this time is the end of our notes. You've got your summary statement here to fill in. So we have blank dominance, codominance, and blank, which are exceptions to Mendel's rules. And then some blanks work together to create traits, and some are affected by their what? So go ahead and get that part filled out. Again, there are 2 additional videos on Canvas that are specific to your workbook practice. And then if you go into the modules, I've also included several Amoeba Sisters videos that cover everything we've talked about today and what we've talked about in previous classes. So if you are unsure about some things, there's a lot of resources there to help kind of get caught up and get clarified as well. Otherwise, I will see you guys next class.